Today we're going to learn how to use adjectives in Spanish. When using adjectives in Spanish, we need to first look at the nouns that they are describing because remember, adjectives describe nouns. There are 4 types of nouns in Spanish. There are singular masculine nouns. These nouns will have L before them and generally end in O. There are singular feminine nouns. These will have la in front of them and generally end in A. There are plural masculine nouns. These will have los in front of them and they end in os. And plural feminine, which will have los in front of them and generally end in as. Again, these endings are sometimes and not always. So you can't always follow that rule. And the reason we need to look at the nouns is because adjectives have to be in agreement with the noun they are describing. So agreement is when an adjective changes to be the same as the noun. So, for example, if you have a masculine noun, you need a masculine adjective. So, the most common type of adjective we have are adjectives that end in O. So, we're going to look how we would change adjectives that end in O to the different genders. So, if we have an adjective that ends in O and we're describing an L noun, we're going to keep the O at the end. And if we're going to describe a la noun, we're going to change that O to an A. If we're going to describe a los noun, we're going to add an S to the O. And if we're going to describe a last noun, we're going to change the O to AS or AS. So if we took bueno as an example and changed it, this is what it would look like. So bueno here, we're keeping that O at the end. But to describe a la noun, we're changing that O to an A. It becomes buena. If we're going to describe a los noun, we're going to add that S to the O at the end, buenos. And if we're going to describe a los noun, we're going to change the O to AS and have buenas. Now, there are a lot of adjectives that don't end in O, and most of them follow these rules. So, these adjectives that end in E, L, N, or ista are considered no gender adjectives, which means they don't have to change masculine versus feminine. They can describe either. We do still have to worry about singular versus plural. So that's like adding that S. So if we have just one thing, we leave them as it is. But if we have many things that we're describing, we're going to add S's. So if you're going to describe an L noun, you're just going to keep that adjective as it is. So again, if it ends in one of these 4 endings, you're going to keep it as it is. And that's going to be the same for la nouns. For los nouns, we need to make it plural. And to do that, you're going to add an S to the E or ista, and you're going to add ES to L or N. And that's the same rule for los nouns. You're going to add an S to E or ista and an ES to the L or the N. And to see that in action, so here, if we're using sociable or fácil to describe an L noun or a la noun, they stay the same. When we describe las nouns and los nouns, we add an S to that E and we add an ES to this L and get sociables and fáciles. And again, for los nouns and las nouns, they're the exact same. So let's see that in action. Let's use bueno and joven to describe each noun. So if we have el chico and we want to describe it bueno, chico is an L noun, so it's masculine and singular. Bueno ends in an O, so we're going to use that rule of leaving the O as it is. Joven ends in an N. When we're describing an L noun, we keep it as it is. So el chico would be bueno and joven. Now let's try la chica. So la chica, that is feminine and singular, that's a la noun. So if we have bueno that ends in an O, we're going to change that O to an A. Joven, though, remember, it can describe a masculine noun or a feminine noun. So we're going to keep it as it is. And it becomes buena and joven. Let's look at los chicos. If we're going to use buenos to describe los chicos or a los noun, we're going to add an S to the end because we keep that O and add an S. For joven, now we have to make this plural. Since it's an N, we're going to add ES and it becomes buenos and jóvenes. For las chicas, how would we change bueno? So we're going to describe a los noun. The O will change to AS. Joven needs to become plural, so we're going to add ES also, and it's going to become buenas and jóvenes. Making adjectives agree takes a lot of practice since we don't do something like this in English. Once you get the hang of it, though, it's something small that you have to change. but I know that it'll get a lot easier. So just keep trying and asking lots of questions.